Runaway brides of Reddit, what's your story? What was the final straw? How last second did you leave? On my 18th birthday, my boyfriend proposed to me at my party, in front of all of my family and friends. I said yes mostly because I was too embarrassed to say no. We had been dating for 2 years, but I was just about to start university. I wasn't ready at all. I asked later, when we were alone, if we could have a long engagement, at least a year or two, and he agreed. We told our families and friends we would be waiting to get married. Less than 3 months later, his mom and my mom took me out for lunch and decided to take me to look at wedding dresses, because it's never too early to start planning. When I saw a really lovely dress that was on sale, my fiancé's mother insisted on buying it for me. Their family was quite wealthy and had set money aside for all of my fiancé's milestones, education, first car, wedding, etc. She told me they were happy to cover the major costs as they were the ones who wanted a big wedding, and joked I could pay her back in grandchildren. A few weeks later, his mom introduced me to a friend who was a florist. Next thing I know, I'm looking at bouquets and discussing table arrangements. Then my fiancé starts talking about venues for our wedding, saying we need to start planning so we can find the perfect place. By this point, I'm truly panicking. I'm just a few months into university, I haven't even fully decided what I want to do with my education. Now I'm choosing venues for a wedding that's supposed to be years away? A wedding that's suddenly looking like the nuptials of a minor royal. I tried talking to my fiancé, but he just wouldn't listen. We saw a venue we liked, but they had no availability for almost 2 years. So we booked it and I could finally breathe again. I had 2 years to get ready for my big fat crazy wedding. Then the venue had a cancellation, for less than 6 months away, and my fiancé accepted it without telling me. Just cancelled our future date and took the one that was now available. Then he arranged the entire wedding with the help of his mom, and mine, damn her helicopter ways, before telling me. When he told me everything was booked, I went mental. His reaction was that he'd gone with all of my choices: re-catering, venue, flowers, etc., and so I should be grateful that he dealt with all the stressful stuff. All I had to do was turn up. When I explained that I didn't want to get married in 6 months' time and that this was the 3rd or 4th time I'd told him I wasn't ready for marriage yet, he told me I was being childish and that the invitations were at the printer, so it was too late to change my mind. I finally realized that he was manipulating me, so I gave him the engagement ring back and told him I didn't want to see him anymore. I told my family and friends, cried a lot, changed my number because he wouldn't stop calling, etc. 2 months later, my mom got a call from his mother, because she hadn't been able to get in touch with me to arrange dress fittings and finalize bridesmaids. He hadn't told them we split up. My mother explained everything to his mother and figured that was that. The following week she had the audacity to present my family with a bill for half of what they had paid out for the wedding. It came to thousands of pounds. They'd booked everything, right down to the cake and the favors, without telling me, and wanted me to pay. Had a friend that didn't know she was the bride until she was halfway down the aisle. Her parents had arranged a marriage for her, common in her culture, and had told her that the family had all been invited to a cousin's wedding. My friend was told everyone was going to be wearing white for whatever reason, I don't remember. They arrived at the church just before the bride was scheduled to walk down the aisle. My friend, thinking they're late, wanted to slip in and stay in the back. Her father, however, takes her arm and they start walking up the aisle. It isn't until they're halfway up that she stops and realizes everyone is looking at her and smiling and crying tears of joy. She turned to one of her aunts in the pew next to her and asked them who was getting married. The whole church went silent, and then the aunt looked at my friend's father and said, "You can't be serious. You planned a wedding for your daughter and just expected her to go along with it? Have the two of them even met? Did you seriously think this would work?" The whole room was them chattering about them, and the father just cleared his throat and told his daughter to keep walking. Luckily the aunt grabbed my friend first and pulled her into the pew, pushed her past the row of people, and they both ran out of the church. Her parents disowned her after that, and she moved in with that aunt. They are an Indian family in the US. Her parents are very traditional, and she expressed that she didn't want to get married and wanted to focus on her career. My boyfriend at the time had a female friend who, the night before her wedding, finally spilled to several friends, including him, that her fiancé had been emotionally and physically abusing her, and she wasn't sure she should get married. We'd all noticed her being distanced from us, but she'd deny every time that something was wrong. The next day, her family mobilized to get the word out to all her guests, and a bunch of her friends essentially forced themselves into the guy's house to get all her things back. My boyfriend was a cop, so had a duty to press charges or something on the guy. I was never clear on this part. The woman was pissed off at him for a while, but now a few years later is seeing someone great whom I've actually known forever and is quite a bit happier now. Plus, she knows her friends and family have her back and can get shit done. Not me but my mother. My mom called off a wedding just weeks before the ceremony date because she found out her fiancé had lied to her about his whereabouts and was partying at a hotel with friends and other women. She caught him in a hot tub at 1 a.m. with twin sisters. Fast forward about 3 years later. She starts dating and later marries the man who is my biological father. She said meeting the family was especially awkward when she discovered my father had 3 sisters. 2 of which were the twins she caught her ex-fiancé with in the hot tub. Some things to clarify: my mom and dad stayed together and later got married after my mom had learned who his sisters were, so she did get over the fact that they were essentially what ruined her first wedding. My mom and dad are divorced now and have been for years, which is unrelated to my dad's sisters or his family in general. They just weren't compatible together and argued a lot. Not a big surprise that my dad wasn't the most faithful man either. I get my faithfulness in relationships from my mom, thank God. Not me, and I'm not sure it counts as runaway, but my sister broke up with her fiancé 4 months before their wedding, which was already planned and paid for. I'll be honest, I don't know the full story. Even now, 18 months later, she still hasn't fully opened up to us about it, but I never really liked the guy. He was nice enough, but he absolutely could not handle his drink. He could never have a little drink, no, he had to drink the whole bar every time, then would come home and puke up over the entire house. He then had the audacity to complain whenever my sister would go out with her friends just for a couple of drinks, to the point where he eventually just stopped letting her go out altogether. His family was an absolute mess as well. His mom and stepdad were pretty cool, but they moved to Canada to pursue their dreams, leaving my sister and her fiancé in the hands of aunts and uncles who did not approve of her at all. His little brother was on-off with his teenage girlfriend he eventually knocked up, and who was always trying to one-up my sister too. Eventually, as far as she's told us, she just felt trapped by the guy. She was prohibited from hanging out with her friends, and was forced to go to family events with people who despised her. He made her distance herself from us, which I think was painful for her as she essentially missed quality time with her new nephews at the time. He basically controlled every aspect of her life. Anyway, she unceremoniously dumped him on New Year's Eve, and cancelled the wedding then and there. I don't think she even saw him again after that. She was always out when he came to collect his stuff. Obviously his family weren't too happy about it and harassed her for months. She became depressed and needed medication, but it was my family that had to foot the wedding bill anyway. They were just glad to have their daughter back. Got engaged after 3 months and started planning pretty much straight away. Was very young and his mother wanted to decorate the entire wedding redneck as I had a fallout with her over it as I felt she wasn't letting anyone have a say and we were paying for it. Red flags started popping up: his temper, he got a huge neck tattoo with my name, started becoming possessive and verbally abusive. Then dress shopping, I broke down and said no, this isn't right. It was like a store of thousands of dresses was telling me there wasn't a single one that was in there for this occasion, so it couldn't happen. I sat in my car, went home, placed the ring on the counter, packed my stuff and left. Not my story, but my best friend's. Note, I had her permission to tell this story back in high school. I had this friend called Cheyenne. We were very close and loved planning our dream weddings. Every month when the new bridal magazine came in, we spent free period at a bench with a pen circling and gushing over dresses. Flash forward to junior year and she meets this guy called Nick. Nick was fairly popular at our school, mainly known for his older sisters who were triplets and just known for being the triplets. She and him started dating after a couple weeks and it was not good. They were on and off all the time, and it was known that he cheated on her every other weekend when she was away at her mom's house. After they graduated they broke up for a little bit and got back together after 3 to 4 months. Halfway through sophomore year of college, Cheyenne starts acting very out of character. She started drinking pretty heavily and due to that we got in a fight and didn't speak for a year. When we did, it was because she found out she was pregnant with Nick's baby and they were planning to get married. I was ecstatic and soon we regained our original closeness. I was going to be her mo and they were going to have a beautiful wedding in the mountains. Day of Cheyenne seemed shaky and odd. She insisted she was fine, but I kept an eye on her. 15 minutes before we're scheduled to walk down the aisle, I run outside real quick to see where Cheyenne was because she had stepped out and no one knew where she was. I get to the road close by and see a little pair of heels by. I leave the shoes in case she was planning on coming back and go tell the DOC. Ceremony gets put on hold and we're all looking around for Cheyenne, and I see Nick get really angry and hear him mutter that damn bitch when I get my hands on her. Now I don't know what the hell to do. I'm getting concerned for Cheyenne, worried she fell down the hill or something, so we have people looking all around. I smell something fishy and think that maybe she ran off, considering their past and what I just heard Nick say. I drive into town, which was just a 10-minute drive, more like a 45 one-hour-long walk, and see Cheyenne in her big white fluffy dress, easy to spot, walking into a bar. I go in to talk to her, ask her what the hell happened, and she confessed that Nick had been verbally, physically and sexually abusing her since high school. Apparently that morning he threatened her that if she didn't behave he'd kill her and her baby. I called the police immediately, notified the DOC to just cancel it all and that I found her, and drove her to the hospital. Long, messy trial later plus a restraining order. He was behind bars and she moved to Portland so she'd be close enough to her family but far enough away from him. Now she's getting remarried in September 2020 and her baby is now 4 years old and beautiful. Her name is Harmony. One of the people I know is what I can call a serial fiancé. She dates guys right until they propose to her, then she says yes, starts looking for venues, dresses, etc., and then she calls off the wedding and breaks up with the guy, saying I didn't want to marry him anyway, he's, insert reason here. The last time this happened she had an AMA about her wedding on Instagram, but 2 months before the supposed date of the wedding all her photos, AMA answers and mentions of engagement were gone. Maybe she's getting a kick out of it, I don't know. I was almost the runaway bride, and I regret not making that decision. Dated my high school sweetheart for almost 2 years before the jealousy became overwhelming. I broke up with him a month after we'd graduated, but we were going to the same college and met up again that fall. I found myself pregnant by that October, and was kicked out of my Catholic home. His parents let me stay with them, but we could no longer live in sin and had to be married. I didn't want to go back to living in my car so I agreed. Parents wiggled back into my life before the wedding. Fast forward to day of the ceremony and the music begins playing, I stand to start walking down the aisle, my dad takes my hand and says, you know, you don't have to do this, you could come home with us. WTF. Could he have mentioned this an hour, a day, a week before? I have always hated drama, and didn't want to be that person, so I just said that I couldn't, and I got married. My ex was controlling, manipulative, and how abusive he was had become much less subtle. I became pregnant and turned overt when we moved out of his parents' house a year later. I ran when he nearly hit our baby's skull with his shoe, which he threw because he'd found something in the carpet I didn't vacuum properly. Yeah, totally should have picked the runaway bride option.